I really didn't expect I'd be ever saying this, but doing nothing is slowly becoming the most important part of my creative routine. I've been thinking a lot about what it really means to be productive. I've spent many years pushing myself to produce more in general, but I'm starting to realize that creativity needs a very important other element: stillness. I'm sharing my experience as a pianist, composer, and video creator. I'm a freelancer, and having the freedom and flexibility to choose my own schedule and projects has been both a blessing and a curse. I've had to develop different systems and habits to help me maintain a steady workflow, avoid distractions, and hold myself accountable for self-imposed deadlines. I've shared these on my channel, and while I still believe that these are very important for every freelancer and musician to master, I want to give a spotlight to the other side of things: creating empty space in your day. Here are 7 reasons why doing nothing is essential for creativity. Number 1. We can pay attention to quality over quantity. If you set aside part of your day to disconnect and do nothing for a couple of hours, you have less time to do your actual work. This forces you to focus more on exactly what you want to accomplish during your work hours, increasing the quality of your work. For quite a while, my days were very long. I also underslept, so I would have the whole day to consistently chip away at work. Although my schedule looked like I was quite productive, the quality of my work started to drop because I was focused more on quantity. Now, in the second half of the video, I'll share my personal experience on how I actually started to shift my schedule. I've always been a night owl with zero discipline for bedtimes, so if you're struggling with this as well, I have a few practical tips that may help. Number 2, we can prevent burnout. At one point or another, I think everyone will actually have empty space in their days, either by design or burnout. Having a creative job is great because you usually have more flexibility than a desk job, but the work can get very mentally and physically demanding on just a never-ending, consistent basis. I've experienced different forms of burnout in the past, and I noticed that when this happens, I sort of collapse and check out for part of the day, if not for days at a time. This type of empty space, however, is just pure exhaustion and not restorative by any means compared to intentional time set aside to recover. Before we go on, I have a quick announcement. I'm making this sweater here available one more time for the second and final batch for sale. So these are a limited time edition sweater with my logo embroidered right here. It's really nice, soft fabric, and it's your way of being able to support the channel. So thank you so much to everyone who has ordered it in the first round, and I'll include the link in the description if you'd like to grab yours. Number 3, we can have time to actually process things. In my previous video, I mentioned the importance of adding gaps between repetitions while practicing. This is sort of a macro form of that. Sometimes in the past, I would barely have enough time to process what I'm working on at any given moment. I would just work until I'm exhausted at night, then wake up late, and rush into my work again. We have to process a lot of thoughts subconsciously, and this requires time and space to do that. I'm also not just talking about work-related things. Speaking for myself, I've had to process a lot of things in my personal life over the past year, and I realized that I need time and space to do this. This allows me to regroup so that I can focus and show up to my work with a fresh spirit again. Number 4, we can keep things in perspective. When we stop doing things and just sit back, we can observe things with a bit more distance. I noticed myself having more awareness of the privilege of what I do once I started to allow myself time to reflect on things. Sometimes you forget this when you're constantly just buried in work. Something I'm thinking about is what a luxury it is to write music, to spend your day, your work, just doing music in general. It's so extra. And for years, this just became normal. And this thought just keeps coming back. Number 5, we can create space for spontaneous inspiration. When we're glued to our agenda, the only goalposts are the deadlines in our schedule. Even if we have time to include other things, I think it's easy to get into a headspace that makes you feel like you have absolutely no time for most things. By adding space to do nothing in your day, even if it's for an hour or two, it at least helps your mind feel as if there is room for spontaneity. This is crucial for anyone that does something creative. A lot of composing involves openness to spontaneity, and a lot of ideas kind of sprout from various thoughts and experiences. And I find that having stillness allows for this to happen more naturally. One thing that I've finally been able to do is go into my phone and go through all of the voice memos of my sketches and my sort of in the moment ideas that I've just been storing here and I never really looked at again. I have maybe close to 200 here, and I've been going through quite a few of them. It's the little steps forward. Number 6, our senses become sharper. When you're not engaged in doing a task, your mind and senses free up to notice everything around you. I spent hours just sitting outside or resting indoors recently, and I started to notice sounds, colors, and lighting way more than before. I believe this relates back to your creative work because your senses have a chance to become more refreshed than before. This feeds into your work as a creative individual, and also it just enhances the quality of your life in general. Number 7, we gain structure and a rhythm for the day. Now, I think this one is much more important than I have previously realized. The act of creating nothing hours in your daily routine gives your schedule more structure. So I talked about the blessing and curse of having flexibility in your day. When I'm working on new music, for example, it doesn't matter how I structure my days as long as I hand in the score by a certain date. This led to very chaotic schedules for me in the past, where I would overwork for several weeks and then switch gears to a full week of recovery. Now, don't get me wrong, this works on some occasions, and I will probably continue with this pattern from time to time, but it's much more beneficial to have a daily rhythm. Also, in order to clear part of your day on a consistent basis, you have to get organized. This leads me to the next section. I'm going to talk about how to actually practice having empty space in your schedule. All of this kind of happened by accident, by the way. So recently, I did a video where I covered Gustav Mahler's music. As a follow-up to that, I thought it might be fun to try out his daily routine. It consists of waking up extremely early and composing for 5 to 6 hours first thing in the morning, then including long walks, resting, rehearsals, and social gatherings for the rest of the day. So I didn't end up making that video, but what I learned from Mahler is to front load the day so that the second half of the day can include many still hours. Nowadays, I've been enjoying about 3 to 4 hours of completely empty hours to my day. This doesn't include the short breaks between agenda items, getting ready for the day, or winding down. I'm talking about a solid blank block in my schedule where I'm not on my phone or doing any random errands. In order to do this, I had to change my sleep schedule. So sticking to Mahler's routine, I've been waking up pretty early these days, around 6 a.m., and going to bed around 11 p.m. or at the very latest, midnight. This is, of course, easier said than done, but it is possible, and this is coming from a former night owl. Now to the practical tips if you're interested in how to actually shift your schedule to create this empty space for yourself. Tip number 1, start the day early to avoid distractions. Since I've been a night owl most of my life, this really wasn't easy for me. In order to shift my sleep schedule, I pretended as if I was traveling into a new time zone and had to get over jet lag. The hardest thing for me was to stop the day at a reasonable hour, even though I felt like I didn't finish all of the things that I needed to. Also, I needed discipline to resist the temptation to sort of veg out before bed and spend time on my phone. What worked for me is to keep my phone outside of my bedroom and wind down with books and journaling. Tip number 2, commit intensely to your work hours. The first 5 or 6 hours of the day will be very important because this is when you really want to buckle down and get to work. Instead of taking a break every hour or so, what I found works for me is to just take one larger break in between breakfast and lunch where I walk my dogs. This is super crucial because the point of all of this is not to just be lazy and have a lot of hours where you're not doing anything, but to rearrange your day so that you can have that stillness in your day. Tip number 3, don't skip the empty hours. I feel like I need to mention this because I want to emphasize that this schedule is not about hustling and packing more things into your day. It's about having the discipline to do your work efficiently so that you can enjoy those hours where you're doing nothing. In the past, I've tried and maintained routines that involved getting up very early and essentially having this super long and productive day. I would try to fill every corner of my day because I was really convinced that in order to create, I needed to be in constant motion. I now realize how misdirected that was, and it's really never sustainable. So yes, don't skip the empty hours. Now, of course, you may want to do this in reverse and have your empty block in the morning and do your work at night. But I prefer doing the work in the morning because I find it easier to transition into an early bedtime after a relaxing evening. So I'm not sure how all of this will last, but so far it feels really good and I've been experiencing a ton of creative benefits from this, so I'm motivated to continue. If you found this interesting, you may want to check out an experiment I did in the past where I tried Eric Satie's daily routine, which was incredibly unique and eye-opening. I want to hear all of your thoughts on this and also what you think about daily routines in general in the comments below. Grab your Nahre Soul sweater before they sell out, and I'll see you in the next video.